In a far-off galaxy, tensions were rising like storm clouds on the horizon. For many years, humans and aliens had lived apart, each following their own ways. Humans were known for their brave warriors and strong spirit, while the alien empire was celebrated for its ancient wisdom and graceful traditions. But now, a new whisper of change was stirring among the stars. In the center of the alien empire, Princess Solarian carried the hopes of her people. She was young yet noble, and everyone admired her gentle nature and calm determination. The princess had always been a symbol of peace and stability in her realm. However, recent rumors had reached the palace walls, whispers of a mighty human warrior who had fought many battles and earned a fearsome reputation. His name was spoken with both respect and apprehension, and many wondered what his arrival might mean for their peaceful ways. Inside the grand marble halls of the palace, the leaders of the empire debated the future. Some were afraid that the human warrior's strength could force unwanted change upon them, while others thought he might bring a new sense of honor and challenge their old ways to be even better. The uncertainty spread like a cold wind through the corridors, making every citizen feel the weight of what was to come. Princess Solarian listened to these heated discussions with a heavy heart. She knew that, as the daughter of the empire, she had a duty to remain calm and collected, even when her heart felt heavy with worry. Every evening, the princess walked alone in the palace garden, under the soft glow of distant stars. There, among blooming flowers and whispering trees, she would think about her people's future. The quiet of the night and the cool breeze gave her strength and helped her decide to stand firm in her duty. At the same time, far from the palace, the human warrior prepared for the challenges ahead. His path was filled with battles and hard choices. In his heart, he carried the hopes and dreams of his own people. The galaxy was changing, and soon, the fate of both humans and aliens would be decided by events neither side could control. Every star in the night sky seemed to watch over the galaxy, as if knowing that a great story was about to unfold. In this time of rising tension, every citizen felt the stirring of destiny. The alien empire braced itself for the unknown, and Princess Solarian vowed to protect her people with all her heart. Though the future was uncertain, the princess remained determined to hold on to the traditions of her ancestors, even as the winds of change began to blow. Thus, as the galaxy waited with bated breath, the stage was set for a meeting that could change everything. A meeting that would test the strength, honor, and courage of both worlds. Princess Solarian was known by all as the very image of grace and strength. Even at a young age, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made her stand out among her people. Not only was she admired for her beauty and calm voice, but she was also respected for her careful thinking and kind heart. Inside the grand palace, the princess faced many hard decisions. Her trusted advisors gathered in the great hall, speaking in low and worried voices about the threat from a fierce human warrior. They described him as strong, fearless, and dangerous. The advisors pressed her to meet this warrior face to face so that she could show the empire that she was not afraid. Yet the princess felt a deep uncertainty about such a meeting. Princess Solarian believed that true strength came from wisdom and calm, not from anger or force. She had heard stories of the human warrior's brave deeds and saw hints of honor in his eyes. Even though many of her people feared him, she wondered if there might be more to him than the violent tales. Could his heart be as noble as the stories suggested? These thoughts filled her mind as she tried to decide the best course of action. Every day, the princess walked alone in the palace gardens. Under the soft glow of distant stars and the gentle light of the twin moons, she found a moment of peace away from the heavy debates of the court. The cool breeze and the rustle of the leaves made her feel calm, even as the world around her grew more uncertain. In these quiet moments, she often thought about the future of her people and the possibility of a peaceful resolution. She wondered if meeting the human warrior might open a door to understanding rather than conflict. One evening, she sought the counsel of her closest advisor, Master Riven, a wise old man with gentle eyes. He explained that sometimes Facing an enemy could clear doubts and reveal a path to peace. His calm words helped the princess see that there might be a chance to learn more about the warrior before deciding on a course of action. Even so, a part of her remained worried. How could she trust someone who was known mainly for his strength in battle? Would his presence only bring more tension to her kingdom? Despite these fears, Princess Solarian was determined not to let worry steal her grace. She practiced speaking calmly and confidently, and her measured steps in the palace corridors showed a woman who was ready for any challenge. She listened carefully to every suggestion from her advisors, weighing each word with care. With each discussion, a small light of hope grew in her heart, a hope that a meeting with the human warrior might lead to a future of understanding, rather than more strife. As the stars twinkled above on that quiet evening, the princess made a silent promise to herself. She would hold on to her calm and gentle spirit, no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. She would protect her people with kindness and courage, trusting that even in uncertain times, a peaceful future was possible. In a distant corner of the galaxy, on a harsh and barren planet, Captain Marcus Kane prepared for a mission that would change the course of history. From a young age, Marcus had learned to survive in a world where every day was a battle. His rugged features and steady eyes told stories of hardship and victory. The people of his settlement spoke in hushed tones about his many feats, and soon his name spread across human colonies as a symbol of courage and honor. Marcus was not only strong in body, but also in heart. He grew up with simple values: loyalty, duty, and kindness. His father had taught him that fighting was sometimes necessary to protect those who could not protect themselves. With every scar on his body, he carried a lesson learned from past conflicts. Now, he stood as a human champion, ready to face a challenge that went beyond the limits of his home planet. As he walked through the busy corridors of the spaceport, his presence brought a sense of calm determination to those around him. The hum of engines and the chatter of fellow travelers filled the air. Yet Marcus moved with quiet purpose. He checked his armor, ensuring every piece was in place. His gear was simple but well used, a sign of many battles fought and won. He knew that soon he would leave behind the familiar sights of his world and venture into the unknown. In a small room near the launch bay, Marcus took a moment to think about the journey ahead. He remembered the faces of his family and friends, people who had placed their trust in him. Their hopes and dreams were now tied to his actions. As he stared out of the window at the starry sky, he felt a deep sense of responsibility. The mission was not just about confronting an enemy. It was about protecting a future where humans could live with dignity and honor. News had reached his ears about an alien princess known for her wisdom and calm. Her name was spoken with both admiration and caution among human circles. Some believed that meeting her might bring peace, while others warned that it could lead to conflict. Marcus wondered if their meeting would spark a battle or open the door to a new alliance. Even though he was a warrior, he respected strength that was guided by noble intentions. With a final look at the horizon, Marcus stepped onto the waiting transport. The engines roared to life as the ship began its ascent into the vast darkness of space. Every moment felt heavy with possibility. He was aware that this mission would test his skills, his beliefs, and his spirit, yet he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Captain Marcus Kane sailed into the unknown with steady resolve. His journey was more than a battle. It was a quest for understanding, peace, and the chance to unite two very different worlds under a banner of hope and honor. On a windswept plain on the disputed border world, fate prepared to bring Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane together for the very first time. The day was cool, and the sky wore a soft gray color, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The princess had traveled far from her palace, determined to see the human warrior with her own eyes and to understand the man behind the many stories. At the same time, Marcus Kane journeyed with his small team, each step filled with both caution and curiosity about the unknown lands and the rumors that had reached him. The princess rode slowly on a small, graceful hover cart, her eyes scanning the open land for any sign of trouble. She wore a long, flowing robe that fluttered lightly in the gentle breeze, a symbol of her noble status and the calm spirit that had been her guide. Her heart pounded with both fear and hope. Would this meeting lead to a battle that might tear apart old alliances, or could it be the first step toward a better future? Not far away, Captain Kane and his team halted as they reached a small clearing. They had been tracking strange signals and unusual movements in the area. And now, as if on cue, a small figure emerged from behind a rocky outcrop. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he saw the delicate figure approaching. The warrior had heard the whispers of the princess's presence, and now the reality was here before him. When their eyes met, time seemed to slow. Princess Solarian and Captain Kane stood a few paces apart, each studying the other carefully. For a long moment, neither spoke a word. The silence was filled with the sound of the wind and the quiet rustling of the grass. In that stillness, both realized that they were not just representatives of their own people. They carried the hopes and fears of entire worlds. The princess spoke first, her voice soft yet clear. "I am Solarian, daughter of the Empire. I come in peace, seeking to learn and understand." Her words, simple and honest, floated in the air. Captain Kane's reply was measured and respectful. "I am Marcus Kane, a warrior of my people. I too wish for a path that avoids needless conflict." As they spoke, the tension began to ease. The princess noticed the weariness in the warrior's eyes, a sign that he had seen many hardships. In turn, Kane saw the careful determination in her gaze, the evidence of a leader who carried her people's dreams. They walked slowly together toward a nearby outcrop where they could talk away from the eyes of their followers. Here, under the open sky, they began to share their stories. Each tale told was simple and sincere. The princess spoke of a kingdom that valued wisdom and peace, while the warrior recounted battles fought for the honor of his people. Though their paths had been very different, both knew that their meeting was no accident. In that quiet clearing, with the land stretching endlessly around them, a fragile bridge began to form, a bridge built on respect, understanding, and the promise of a new beginning for both their worlds. The cold wind blew gently across the open plains as Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane stood facing each other. Though their words had been polite, there was still tension between them. Both carried the weight of their people's expectations, and neither could afford to show weakness. Solarian's golden eyes studied the human warrior carefully. He stood tall, his posture strong and confident. His armor was worn but sturdy, marked with scars of past battles. He did not bow or show fear, which both annoyed and intrigued her. She had always been surrounded by people who treated her with the highest respect. This human, however, met her gaze directly, showing no hesitation. "You speak of honor," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Yet, humans are known for their recklessness. You rush into battles without thinking, breaking the balance of the galaxy. How can I trust that your kind seeks peace?" Marcus crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "And your people?" he countered. "You hide behind rules and traditions, speaking of peace while keeping power tightly in your hands. Do you ever listen to the voices of those outside your empire?" The princess narrowed her eyes. "We listen to wisdom, not chaos." Marcus shook his head slightly, a hint of amusement in his gaze. Wisdom without action means nothing. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Around them, their respective soldiers watched, hands hovering near weapons, waiting for any sign of hostility. But neither leader moved. Finally, Solarian took a slow breath, calming the frustration rising inside her. This man was different from what she had expected. He was not just a brute seeking war. There was thought behind his words, purpose in his stance. And yet, his way of thinking was so different from her own. Seeing her hesitation, Marcus softened his tone. "We are not enemies yet, Princess, but that depends on the choices we make here." The princess glanced toward the sky, where the twin moons had begun to rise. The weight of the moment pressed on her shoulders. Could she truly afford to take the first step toward trust? At that moment, A loud explosion shattered the silence. The ground shook, and bright flames erupted in the distance. Both Solarian and Marcus turned sharply to see smoke rising on the horizon. Their soldiers rushed forward, weapons ready. "It's an attack," one of Solarian's guards shouted. Marcus drew his weapon instinctively, his battle instincts kicking in. He turned to the princess, eyes sharp. "We don't have time for arguments. If we don't work together now, we may lose more than just this meeting." Solarian hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Agreed." Without another word, the human warrior and the alien princess ran side by side toward the battlefield. Their differences would have to wait. For now, survival came first. The explosion shook the ground as flames rose in the distance. The peaceful talks between Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane were forgotten in an instant. Both their people stood frozen, unsure of whether to fight each other or to focus on the real danger approaching from the horizon. Solarian's heart pounded as she turned toward her guards. "Find out what's happening," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Marcus was already moving, scanning the battlefield. His years of combat experience told him one thing: this was not an accident. Someone had planned this attack. But who? A scout rushed toward them, breathing heavily. "My princess, it's the HFY raiders. They've broken through the eastern border and are heading this way." Solarian's blood ran cold. The HFY were a lawless race, mercenaries, and pirates who thrived on war. They had no allegiance, only hunger for destruction and profit. If they were attacking now, it meant someone had paid them to strike at this very moment. Marcus clenched his fists. So this wasn't just fate. Someone doesn't want peace between humans and the Empire. He looked at Solarian, his blue eyes burning with intensity. "This changes things. Are you ready to fight together?" Solarian hesitated. For years, she had been trained to lead with wisdom, not violence. But now, standing in the middle of an impending war, she had no choice. She lifted her chin. "I will not let my people fall." Marcus nodded. "Then let's move." Together, they ran toward the rising smoke, their forces following close behind. As they reached the battlefield, they saw the enemy, HFY warriors in dark armor, their glowing red eyes filled with malice. They rode on hovercrafts, striking down anything in their path with plasma weapons. Civilians screamed as they fled for safety. Marcus didn't hesitate. He charged forward, drawing his weapon. With precise movements, he took down the first raider with a clean strike. His soldiers followed, forming a defensive line to protect the innocent. Solarian, though not a warrior by training, stood firm. She raised her hand, and from the sky, her royal guards descended, their energy blades humming as they joined the battle. She stepped forward, using her knowledge of strategy to direct her soldiers, ensuring they held their ground. Side by side, the human warrior and the alien princess fought with their people. The battle was fierce, but for the first time, humans and the alien empire were not fighting against each other. They were fighting together. As the HFY numbers began to dwindle, Marcus glanced at Solarian. Not bad for someone who avoids chaos. She smirked slightly, dusting off her robe. Not bad for someone who thinks wisdom is nothing. As the battle settled, both realized something. They had just proven that humans and aliens could stand as one. But who had sent the HFY? That question would have to wait, because this war was far from over. The battlefield was still covered in smoke as the last of the HFY raiders flowed into the shadows. Their attack had failed, but the damage was done. Several buildings lay in ruins, and injured soldiers groaned in pain. The air smelled of burnt metal and scorched earth. Princess Solarian stood among her people, her royal robe torn and dirtied, but her posture remained regal. She had never been in the middle of a battle before, not like this. Yet something inside her had changed. She no longer saw war as just chaos and destruction. She saw the necessity of strength when faced with those who wished to destroy peace. Marcus Kane wiped blood from his brow. his armor scratched and dented from the fight. He had fought in countless battles before, but this one felt different. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting alongside people who had once been his enemies. And for the first time, he saw them not as opponents, but as allies. "We need to know who sent them," Marcus said, turning to Solarian. This wasn't just some random attack. Someone wanted to stop this meeting before it even started. Solarian nodded, her golden eyes filled with thought. "And that means the true enemy is still out there." She looked at her wounded soldiers, her heart heavy. "We cannot let this happen again." Marcus admired her resolve. Despite the destruction around them, she held her head high. He had met many leaders before. Some were arrogant, some were weak, but Solarian was neither. She carried the burden of her people with quiet strength. A scout rushed forward, bowing before Solarian. "My princess, we found something in the wreckage of the Selkiri ships." Solarian and Marcus followed the scout to a pile of burning debris. Among the wreckage, a small metal device blinked with a faint red light. Marcus knelt and picked it up. It was a data chip, one that could hold the answer to their questions. Solarian turned to her guards. "Take this to the palace. Have our best minds decode it immediately." Marcus watched her give orders with precision. There was no hesitation in her voice, no uncertainty. She was no longer just a princess of peace. She was becoming a leader of action. She turned to Marcus. "I owe you a debt, Captain Kane. Without your help, we would have lost many more lives today." Marcus smirked slightly. "And here I thought you didn't trust humans." Solarian gave a soft sigh. "Perhaps I was wrong about some things." Marcus chuckled. "Well, that's a start." For the first time, they shared a brief moment of understanding. The battle had forced them to fight together, and in doing so, it had built the first thread of trust between them. But the real challenge was still ahead, finding out who had tried to stop their alliance before it could begin. Back at the royal palace, the air was thick with tension. The battle had ended, but the questions it left behind were more dangerous than the fight itself. Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane stood in the grand chamber, watching as her royal advisors examined the data chip recovered from the wreckage. The room was silent except for the hum of the decoding machine. Everyone waited as the encrypted message slowly unraveled. Then suddenly, the screen flickered, revealing the face of a shadowy figure. The image was grainy, but the voice was clear. "Ensure the human and the princess never form an alliance. They must remain enemies. The balance must not be broken." Solarian's golden eyes narrowed. "Someone fears what we could achieve together." Marcus crossed his arms, and they were willing to send raiders to kill us for it. One of the advisors, an elder named Valen, stepped forward. "This voice, it belongs to Prime Commander Durov of the Draken Dominion." Solarian's breath caught. The Draken Dominion was a powerful faction, known for manipulating galactic politics from the shadows. They thrived on war and division, ensuring that no species ever grew strong enough to challenge them. If they had sent the XL carry, it meant they saw the possibility of a human empire alliance as a threat to their control. Marcus clenched his fists. "They want to keep humans and the empire apart, so we stay weak." He turned to Solarian. "I don't know about you, but I don't like being someone else's pawn." Solarian lifted her chin. "Nor do I." For the first time, she saw Marcus not just as a warrior, but as a man who valued more than just battle. He understood strategy, politics, and power, not just brute force. They were different, yet in this moment, their goals were the same. "Then we make our move," Solarian said firmly. "If they fear our unity, we must give them something real to fear." Marcus smirked. "Now you're speaking my language, princess." They began planning immediately. Solarian provided knowledge of the Empire's resources and influence, while Marcus shared his expertise in combat tactics. They worked side by side, their ideas blending together like two pieces of a puzzle. "Your empire values strategy," Marcus noted, But sometimes you need to act before the enemy expects it. And humans charge into danger without knowing what lies ahead. Solarian countered. Yet, your unpredictability is also your greatest weapon. Marcus chuckled. So we combine both, your precision, my instinct. Solarian gave a small smile. Agreed. As the sun set outside the palace windows, a new alliance was born, not one forced by treaties, but by trust. The Draken Dominion had tried to break them before they could unite, but now they had made a mistake. By trying to keep them apart, they had only brought them closer together. The time for words had ended. Now, only action remained. Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane stood at the command center, watching the holographic map display the movements of the Draken Dominion's fleet. The enemy had not waited long. Their ships were already on the move, preparing for an invasion that would ensure humanity and the Empire never formed an alliance. Solarian's advisors urged caution. We should fortify the capital and prepare for a siege, one suggested. Marcus shook his head. That's exactly what they expect us to do. If we wait, we'll be trapped in our own city. Solarian turned to Marcus. Then what do you propose? A smirk touched his lips. We take the fight to them. The advisors gasped at his boldness, but Solarian remained calm. She understood now. This was the difference between humans and her people. Humans didn't wait for fate, they seized it. And for once, she found herself agreeing. She stepped forward. Prepare the fleet. We strike first. The battle begins. The Empire's warships, sleek and elegant, soared through space alongside the rough, battle-scarred human vessels. It was a strange sight. Two forces that had once been enemies now fighting side by side. As they neared the Draken Dominion's fleet, Solarian took a deep breath. She sat in the command chair of her flagship, her golden eyes locked onto the enemy formation. All units prepare for engagement. On the human warship, Marcus grinned as he tightened his armor. All right, boys, let's show them what we're made of. The battle erupted like a storm. Energy blasts lit up the void as the two fleets clashed. The Empire's forces moved with precision, executing careful maneuvers. The humans, on the other hand, fought with raw, aggressive tactics that threw the enemy off balance. Solarian's ship weaved through the chaos, directing firepower where it was needed most. Meanwhile, Marcus and his strike team boarded the enemy command ship, cutting through enemy forces with brutal efficiency. Inside the enemy flagship, Marcus fought his way to the control room, taking down Draken soldiers with quick, calculated strikes. The final door stood before him, but as it opened, a figure stepped out. Prime Commander Durov. The Draken leader smirked. I should have known humans wouldn't stay in their place. Marcus raised his weapon. And I should have known cowards like you only fight in the shadows. Durov lunged, and the two warriors clashed in a brutal fight. Marcus dodged and countered, his strength against the alien speed. But in the end, experience won. With a final strike, Marcus sent Durov crashing to the ground. Victory and a new future. With Durov defeated, the Draken forces fell into disarray. The Empire and humans pressed the attack, forcing them into retreat. As the battle ended, Solarian and Marcus stood side by side, watching the enemy flee. We did it, Solarian whispered. Marcus grinned. Told you we make a good team. For the first time in history, humans and the Empire had fought together. And won. The future was no longer uncertain. It was theirs to shape. The time for words had ended. Now, only action remained. Princess Solarian and Captain Marcus Kane stood at the command center, watching the holographic map display the movements of the Draken Dominion's fleet. The enemy had not waited long. Their ships were already on the move, preparing for an invasion that would ensure humanity, and the Empire never formed an alliance. Solarian's advisors urged caution. We should fortify the capital and prepare for a siege, one suggested. Marcus shook his head. That's exactly what they expect us to do. If we wait, we'll be trapped in our own city. Solarian turned to Marcus. Then what do you propose? A smirk touched his lips. We take the fight to them. The advisors gasped at his boldness, but Solarian remained calm. She understood now. This was the difference between humans and her people. Humans didn't wait for fate. They seized it. And for once, she found herself agreeing. She stepped forward. Prepare the fleet. We strike first. The battle begins. The Empire's warships, sleek and elegant, soared through space alongside the rough, battle-scarred human vessels. It was a strange sight. Two forces that had once been enemies now fighting side by side. As they neared the Draken Dominion's fleet, Solarian took a deep breath. She sat in the command chair of her flagship, her golden eyes locked onto the enemy formation. All units prepare for engagement. On the human warship, Marcus grinned as he tightened his armor. All right, boys, let's show them what we're made of. The battle erupted like a storm. Energy blasts lit up the void as the two fleets clashed. The Empire's forces moved with precision, executing careful maneuvers. The humans, on the other hand, fought with raw, aggressive tactics that threw the enemy off balance. Solarian's ship weaved through the chaos, directing firepower where it was needed most. Meanwhile, Marcus and his strike team boarded the enemy command ship, cutting through enemy forces with brutal efficiency. Inside the enemy flagship, Marcus fought his way to the control room, taking down Draken soldiers with quick, calculated strikes. The final door stood before him, but as it opened, a figure stepped out. Prime Commander Durov. The Draken leader smirked. I should have known humans wouldn't stay in their place. Marcus raised his weapon. And I should have known cowards like you only fight in the shadows. Durov lunged, and the two warriors clashed in a brutal fight. Marcus dodged and countered, his strength against the alien speed. But in the end, experience won. With a final strike, Marcus sent Durov crashing to the ground. Victory and a new future. With Durov defeated, the Draken forces fell into disarray. The Empire and humans pressed the attack, forcing them into retreat. As the battle ended, Solarian and Marcus stood side by side, watching the enemy flee. We did it, Solarian whispered. Marcus grinned. Told you we make a good team. For the first time in history, humans and the Empire had fought together. And won. The future was no longer uncertain. It was theirs to shape.